Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Rita Plaskett, and I have the privilege of being a moderator for this afternoon session. Rev Up Your Future. Before I introduce our speaker, a few housekeeping notes. To the right of your viewing window is the audience engagement feature. Please use the chat speech bubble for greetings and general comments. To pose a question for the speaker, please click the Q&A icon at the top. You can also view and like questions posed by others. Please don't place your questions in the general chat. I'm afraid I might miss them. So now it's time, and it's my pleasure, to introduce our speaker. Hilda is president of People Bright Consulting and creator of the Connect with Rev Up program, designed to help executives, managers, and staff develop their people management skills and create respectful, engaged workplaces. Recognized by the Businesswomen's Network of York Region, her passion in helping others understand the importance of human resources in building healthy workplaces, she received her Business Achievement Reward for her work in promoting HR literacy. An accomplished entrepreneur and work culture expert, she founded iTrans Consulting, an award-winning Canada-wide engineering consulting firm recognized as Best Workplaces in Canada Top 10 twice. The Rev Up Principles of respect, equality, valued, uniqueness, and potential are based on iTrans' success. A successful serial entrepreneur, Hilda works with business leaders and organizations to empower their businesses and teams to rev up their potential. Welcome, Hilda.
Thank you, Rita. We are having a little bit of a technical difficulty. We cannot seem to get a visual on me, so you're going to have the benefit of the slides and my voice. So thank you very much for having me at CanSPEP. I'm really excited to help you rev up your future. I've been watching this morning and listening to Mike Lipkin and Paula Morand, and some of the things they were sharing so resonated with my presentation. So you're going to hear more of the same to really support you and encourage you in your journey. So I'm going to ask the technical people to help me with my slides because, as I said, we do not seem to have a connection with me other than my voice. So next slide, please. Hello, next slide. Yes, thank you. So what's wrong with this picture? Next slide. What is wrong with this picture? If you look at it closely, what you'll see is it's very fuzzy. It's unclear. And so what happened? March 2020. Next slide. The pandemic came. Next slide. And what happened when the pandemic came? It changed our lives. And it happened all across the world. So this wasn't just local to one area. It happened all over the world. And we felt a connection to everybody in the world. Next slide. So now, today, it's November 2021. Next slide, please. And what we're doing here today and throughout the next couple of days is really looking at what's next. Yesterday, you talked about recover. Today, it's about reclaiming your authority. And tomorrow, it's about rise. Next slide. Next slide. So what I want to do is help you rev up your future. Next slide, please. And get ready for success. Next slide. What I want you to do is to get a clearer picture of what's going to happen and how you can reclaim the future with your authority. So let's go on to the next slide. And what I want to share with you is to think about pre-COVID. What happened? Imagine what it was like back pre-COVID. You know, the sumptuous hallways that I would go through as I was moving from event venue room to event venue room, the food that was mainstay, the networking, and the ability to connect and learn about things that were happening, the future, best practices, how to do so many things. And this was the stage. This was where we were. Next slide. Until March 2020. And overnight, next slide, we went from a place where we were watching things like Romeo and Juliet, the ballet, to, next slide, no events. Empty rooms, empty stages, empty basketball courts. Next slide, please. So I remember distinctly Romeo and Juliet. It was Thursday, March the 12th, 2020. Back, please. It was Thursday, March the 12th, 2020, and I was actually in a situation where I was enjoying the ballet, and my friend and I said, I wonder if this is going to be the last time that this is going to be on. It's going to end soon, because we could feel the pandemic coming. And so we went from that, and as we left the venue, we found out that not only did we just extend our March break to 2 weeks, which we knew going in, but when we came out, Broadway was shut and the Raptors games were no longer existing. So overnight, we went from this to the next slide, being in 20 months of pandemic. And if you can just go to the next slide, until we get to this. And so all of these things were happening. We were starting to wear masks, we were vaccinating, we've been screening and social distancing. And we started off with essential services. Do you remember that? Just essential services. And people were starting to work remotely from home. And now today we're thinking about hybrid work environments. And finally, we're able to get events up and running. And CanSPEC, being the leader, is showing the way to say, okay, we're ready. We're ready to have live. We're ready to have virtual and hybrid, and we can make this happen. Travel restrictions are still happening, and we're in transition. People have gone homeschooling and supporting the age. And remember the aging, and remember social unrest, the George Floyd, the Me Too movement, the Black Lives Matter, the Asian hate crimes. All of these things have been exposing us to change, and change that we're really learning to adapt. Next slide. And what I want you to ask yourself is, how were you impacted? Recollect that, because in order for us to move forward, we need to think about where we were. I think Mike Lipkin was saying, yeah, what was it like before? We need to move forward. So my next slide, please, is what was the impact on people, on us, on you? I provided a lot of webinars. So when COVID hit, I sort of thought to myself, okay, we're all in remote. I'm going to start to figure out what kinds of things I need to do to help my clients when we get out of this. And then overnight, I realized, wait a minute, I'm HR. There are many, many business owners who really don't understand what they need to do with their people. And I'm an HR expert. I know what they need to do. I can interpret the changes the government shares with us day by day. Remember, every government was providing a news announcement. So I started by doing webinars. I did 2 webinars a week for 5 weeks, and then 1 webinar a week for the next 25 weeks. So by the end of December, I had provided 30 different webinars to help business owners, leaders, to understand what's going on and how is this impacting our employees. And one of the big things at that time was mental wellness. And it was predicted to be the #1 leading cause for health during the 2020. And that has definitely happened. And people were starting to look at work-life balance and the social and political unrest. Next slide. So I want you to think about, how does this impact on you? Next slide. That one. September 2020. Remember, September 2020 was, people were starting to think about going back up, please. So people were starting to think about what's happening, what needs to happen. And my kids are going back to school. There's a possible serious outbreak now that's coming. I want you to think back to that time of uncertainty. What was your business like at that time? And What advice would you give your 2020 self now, knowing what you know now? How did you manage to get through that last year? You know, was it really difficult, or, you know, would you tell yourself it's okay? You know, if you can share it in the chat line, then other people can kind of know what we all were going through. I know that when I've asked this question of some of my colleagues and my clients, they have said, you know, in September 2020, I was so anxious. I didn't know what was going to happen. But now, a year later, I think it's going to be okay. I really think it's going to be okay. I've learned a lot. And I would tell my September 2020 self to just take it easy. Go with the flow. Every day will bring a new day, and you will figure out what you need to do. So if you've got comments, please share those in the chat line. The next slide. So as event planners, you're thinking about, well, how do I get people back? And I just want to remind you of the curve of change. This is a curve for any type of change, but obviously I'm going to talk about how this is going to impact people returning. So 2.4% are innovators. These are the people that can't wait to get back. And then 13.5 are early adopters. So when you think about the people that are live right now in your event, these are probably the 2.4 and the 13.5% of the adopters. I understand you have full house, which is really exciting. I wish I was there. I think personally, I'm an early adopter, but I'm not going to be an early adopter in this situation because I have health issues with my family. So I'm going to be respectful. And as we move along during this COVID time, there's going to be the early majority. People who are thinking, it's relatively safe now, so I'm going to return. And then there are late majority. These are the people that are really waiting to see how things evolve before they change. And then there's the laggards. So as you're planning, next slide, you're thinking about how is this all going to evolve, and how am I going to attract the people to come either live, hybrid, or in virtual settings. So as a leader and owner of your own event planning business, you're adapting to all the things you've had to do, the catering, the screening of people now, new technologies, and how am I managing the travel and the accommodations. So next slide. So what I want to talk to you about today is the future and how you will reclaim your authority in the business. Next slide. How will you adapt and be a confident leader of the future in the business? Next slide. And earlier today, Mike Lipkin and Paula were really talking about how do you be confident. A lot of what we were seeing and hearing is the confidence in me. That's what has to happen. That's what needs to build. So how will you grow your business and lead your teams and work with clients and colleagues in the new environment? Next slide. So the question I ask you is, what I want to share with you is the key to reclaiming your business is through communicating with confidence. Next slide. So did you know that 85% of your financial success is due to your personality and your ability to communicate, negotiate, and lead? Shockingly, only 15%, according to the Carnegie Institute, is really due to technical knowledge. So it's you. It is you who's going to make a difference as you move forward and reclaim your authority. Next slide. And there's two parts to reclaiming, and that's understanding how to communicate effectively for the success of your business, of your company. The first thing is managing, so the day-to-day aspects, planning the details, managing work, focusing on what the details are. And I know as you lead up to an event like today's, that really takes so much focus to get it right and to execute it, the day-to-day operations. But in order to survive and thrive, you need to think long-term as well. And you need to spend time when you have it to vision what's going to happen, where the future is going, and to be people-focused and set the direction of your company. So next slide. So what I want to share with you is the Rev Up approach. Next slide. And so what is Rev Up? Rev Up is actually something that my husband and I created as a result of being one of the best workplaces in Canada. When we started our company, we really wanted it to be different. I think you probably did that yourself. Why do you go into business? Because you think you can do a good job. And what we decided is we wanted a place where people love to come to work and knew that they were growing. And in your event planning business, you're thinking, I want people to have a great experience when they have an event. And I want to have my clients feel that they had something that was created that was special. So here are 5 key words that I want to share with you. Rev Up is a concept of really energizing your business. But Rev Up is also an acronym for the 5 words. So you can rev up your company, you can rev up your potential, you can rev up your clients, and that's very invigorating and exciting. The words that are forming Rev Up is, first of all, respect. Then the next slide, equality. Then the next slide, valued, then uniqueness, and then finally, potential. So put that in a sentence so that I help you understand why I chose these 5 words to articulate our success. When you treat people, and that's your colleagues, your clients, your employees, and your associates, if you have them, when you treat people with respect, and you look at them as equals, value who they are, look at the uniqueness of individuals and tap into the potential. Imagine what you can do. Next slide, please. So let me break that down for you. Next slide. So respect. The definition of respect is, next slide, the R in respect is a feeling or action shown towards someone that you consider important. Next slide. And so how do you show respect? I used to think that respect was how I wanted to be treated. I would treat others the same way. But what I realized is that what people really want, and I think this is a product of where we are today, what people really want is that you treat them the way they want to be treated. And in order to treat somebody the way they want to be treated, you have to connect with them. You have to know who they are. You have to understand where they're coming from. And that's how you show respect. The next slide. So E stands for equality, the state of being equal, especially in status, rights, or opportunity. Next slide. And that means treating people as equals. When my husband and I had our company, we really wanted to make a place where people felt equal to each other. And I don't mean that, you know, everybody has the same job or whatever. What I mean by equality is that it's a perception. If you treat people and their jobs as equally as important as yours, they do feel connected. They do feel valued. Next slide. So what treating people with equality is, it's about inclusivity. It's about making people feel that you hear them and connect with them. I remember one time when we had an interview and our admin assistant was there because we were hiring another admin assistant as well. And they said, "What's it like here?" And she said, "I love it here because I feel equally as important as my VP." And I think that resonated with me in that wow, that makes sense, because that means that everybody, we've created an environment where people feel valued, feel equal. So that takes us to the next concept, which is valued. So next slide. The V is for valued. It's considered to be important or beneficial or cherished. Doesn't that woman in the slide look like she feels really important, that somebody has taken the time to share with her to make her feel important? So next slide. The valued is the importance of making people feel valued. And when we started our company, we used to make people feel valued privately. Very quietly, we would give somebody a bonus or thank them for doing such a good job and send them off to a conference or something. But we told them not to tell anybody. And I think it was not in the best interest of the company, because we suddenly realized that people, when they feel valued, they want to feel important, and sometimes recognition by others is important. So we started actually doing things that created that sense of value in a more public way. We had, our company was called iTrans, so we actually created a thing called iCars. Because we were a transportation business, we had these little car models, which we covered in a model format and put a little plaque there. And every month we would share with people, wow, this is what this is what you did, that was really important last month. And we want to recognize the project team for doing this. So we started giving out these cars at staff meetings, and that made such a difference to people's sense of feeling valued. You know, if you've got some ideas about how you've made people feel valued, put it in the chat, because people should hear what other people are thinking. And when we did this, we got even excitement. One of the staff members actually made a phone call to his fiance, and he said, I got a car. And she said, oh, what did you buy? He says, no, I got a car. I got 2 cars, in fact. And he was explaining that he had been recognized for the work that he had done on 2 different projects. And she said, you called me because you got a model car? He said, yes, you know, and you could see the sense of pride he had, and the sense of accomplishment, and the sense of recognition. So V is for valued. Then next slide, uniqueness. The U stands for uniqueness. And I think this is the crux of things. Rev Up, respect, equality, and valued, is good, home, decent values that everybody should have. And not everybody does, but everybody should have. But it's the uniqueness piece that really helps you connect with people in a much more intimate way of creating connection. I think Mike Lipkin talked about empathy and creating now our connections. You know, during COVID, we really learned the relationship. The sense of humanity was such an important part. And I remember this morning when he said, look at the person beside you as if you've seen that person for the first time. And for many of you, probably you haven't seen people that you've known for several years, and this was the first time that you were seeing them again. So the U stands for uniqueness, which is a state or condition where someone or something is unlike anything else in comparison. And we are all unique in our own ways. The next 2 slides. Uniqueness is recognizing and fostering the uniqueness of others. As an individual, you have that power to help people understand how they are unique and value them for that uniqueness. And we look at uniqueness as a key to building trust and improving relationships. Time and time again, when I recognize individuals for their uniqueness, I feel the connection to that person and to building a stronger relationship. So uniqueness is a key that you need to help build your communications. So, next slide. Everybody is unique, and I think we use that very liberally, but think about it. There are no 2 people on the planet that are totally alike. Think about our life experiences. You know, Paula talked about her car accident. Lainey talked about her abuse. We all have life experiences that we've gone to that really shape who we are. And then it's our gender and our gender identity, our race and ethnicity. I'm Asian. I wish I could see you in person so you could see me other than my picture, but I am Asian, and I am a third generation born in Canada Asian. So I'm very proud of that distinction, but I share the experiences of somebody who was very early learning how to fit in, as we talked about earlier. You didn't talk about stuff. You didn't talk about gender differences. You didn't talk about even your Asianness. We all wanted to fit in way back when. Our education and our learning, our age, and where we were at that age. You know, when we talk about millennials and we talk about Gen Zs, some people, you know, the millennials were latchkey kids because their parents were working, for example. So our age and the time we grew up really gives us those shared experiences. Our marital status, our health or disabilities if we have it, and religion and belief. So next slide. So when you're out there trying to build your business, there are three things that really are areas where you need to think about. So how will I build this business? How will I stand apart from everybody else? And there are three threats you face in the event planning business, in any business. And the first one is distraction. People have only 7 seconds now before we get bored and we turn things off and we wander off somewhere else. The second thing is competition. You know, you're an event planner. If you look around in the room, or sorry, we're all virtual. If we think about it virtually, many of you who are online with me are event planners. So you're in competition with each other. So how do you set yourself apart? And the last thing is commoditization. I think I heard earlier today, we cannot go back to doing same old, same old. We need to create unique, different experiences, tailor-made to keep it fresh and exciting. So how do you know, address these three distractions? Well, you know, lack of focus, too many other people doing the same thing, and it can look like same old, same old. So I'm challenging you to think about how will you be unique? How will you stand out? And this is where I talk about the Rev Up approach. So next slide. When I created the Rev Up approach, I wanted people to understand, how are you unique? How do you stand out? So next slide. And the uniqueness piece was something that I wanted to do, other than tell you how unique you are, is to quantify that, to put it in some concrete terms. So I'm going to spend the next few minutes talking to you about a tool that I find really helps people understand who they are. And it's called Fascination Advantage. How many people are aware of Fascination Advantage? If you could just say, yeah, I've done the tool, or no, I would really like to get a sense of where people are at. It was created by Sally Hogshead. She is the creator of the science of fascination. She started off her career as a maverick marketer and really used that to help people understand the concept of branding and marketing. And then something she realized, you know, I do this to sell product, but I could do fascination to help people understand who they are. And what she says is, to become more successful, don't change who you are. Rather, become more of who you are. And that's the premise, is you are more than, you are good enough. All of you are thinking, you know, some of my concerns are being confident, being brave, being out there, not being looked at as an imposter syndrome. So what I love about Sally is she approaches things in a very positive way. Next slide. What she says is, different is better. But not only is it better, next slide, different is better than better. Different is better than better. And so what we're saying is our unique differences isn't what should make us look out of sync, but that it is part of who we are, and we should embrace that. So I want to share a little bit about what is fascination. So fascination is, go through the bullet points with me. So the first one is Fascination Advantages is what makes you different and most valuable. Look at it from that positive lens. What makes you different and most valuable? And the next point is, it is your superpowers. The way fascination works is they've scientifically created it, and it's now 28 questions, and you get a 15-page report of who you are. And it identifies your top 2 superpowers. And by superpowers, I'm talking about the language you speak. So just give me a few more minutes to explain that. But when you find out what your top 2 languages are, these are your natural superpowers. These are how you stand out. Next slide. When you communicate using these 2 advantages, you become more influential, more persuasive, and more successful. Why is that? It's because when you speak naturally in your superpowers, your passion shines through, your confidence shines through. And when you're confident, people see that and they trust who you are, and then they want to buy from you. So embracing your strengths and sharing them is how you will succeed in moving forward and people wanting to work with you. The next concept that is different is, I love how it interprets your actions and preferences through the eyes of others. Many of the other assessment tools actually look at how you see the world. You know, are you an analytical? Do you think or do you feel? Whereas in fascination, they look at how do people see you? How do you come across to others? And it's the way you communicate. You know how some people really communicate like they're very decisive, and other people communicate with these crazy ideas that you say, wow, where did that come from? That's amazing. Another thing about Fascination Advantage is that it's been over 10 years of research in neurology and biological anthropology. And it's all started with Sally's perspective of, you know, in marketing, we are selling to people, and we're trying to understand how best to sell to people. And what she said was, when we sell using our superpowers, we do a better job. And the last point I just want to reiterate is Sally Hogshead created this, and she was the creative director for companies like Nike, Coca-Cola, Mini Cooper, and Godiva. And so this Fascination Advantage now is really something that will help you understand who you are. What I want to share next with you is where some of these other assessment tools are, and if you can just pop those through quickly for me. And the last one, that's great. So Mbti, which is Myers-Briggs, and DISC, they're very traditional psychological assessment tools. And they're very good at helping you understand how you see the world, how you pattern your behaviors and your thought processes. And then Strength Finders is getting close to kind of changing the tradition and becoming a little bit more innovative, and a little bit of branding as well. Branding in terms of how you come across, how you show your persona. The Fascination Advantage tool is very innovative because it looks at the world from a more innovative approach rather than traditional, and from a branding marketing approach. So I want to share why it's different. Next slide. So what I mentioned before, it's a branding versus a psychological assessment. And then the next point is it really identifies communication patterns rather than the kind of personality traits that we have. The third point I want to share is that it tells you how the world sees you, not how you see the world. The next point is it's looking at the strengths that you have and uncovering them from a positive perspective of being different and unique. And that's how you get away from being commoditizing. Stand out from your competition by being more of who you are. And the last point is, instead of fixing people, they're looking at your highlights of what you're already doing right. Do you remember when you had a performance evaluation, if you've been out in the workforce, and they say, oh, you know, you're doing a great job, Sally, everything's going well. The one thing you probably could do better is a little bit more, you know, be more positive in the way you communicate. So we're going to send you to a communication school to get some more education in this area. But maybe you're in a business where you don't actually have to communicate on a grand scale. And maybe what you need to be focusing on is something else that's in your strength. Maybe you're a database whiz, and to give you a course on something that will increase your ability to do the database is more effective. And that's what the fascination is really trying to say, is that don't make us whole and try to fill in our gaps. Try to make us better at what we shine at. The next slide. So I want to share a little bit of what those languages are. And you can just scroll down till you get alert and all the pop-up messages, so I don't have to repeat myself. So there are 7 languages. We all know how to speak in these 7 languages, but some we just speak so naturally, fluently, and that's what I call your natural superpowers. And of these 7, when you do the assessment tool, you actually have 2 that really stand out, and they're called your primary and secondary, and they really help you to shine when you speak those languages. So think about this in yourself and in people that you know. The innovators who speaks in their superpower languages, the innovators are those that think outside the box. These are the people, when you hear an idea from them, you say, wow, where did that come from? And isn't that a great idea? Or that's kind of really out there. That may not work. But they're the out of the box thinkers. They're the Bill Gates of the world, the Steve Jobs of the world. They're the Steven Spielbergs and the James Cameron. Imagine what their mind looks like to create a movie that is something that's just out of this world, kind of. The passion people are the people who really care about individuals. They're looking at the emotional aspects, and they really want to help build teams through connections of people. And many of you as event planners love the people part of your business. So you may have passion as one of your primary, secondary, or even a tertiary or 4th language. Power is the ability for people to make decisions and to move towards an objective or goal. And so some of you, even if as event planners, really are decisive. And as a result, power may be one of your primary languages. The prestige people are the people that are looking at improvement, continuous improvement, always trying to make it better and refine something. The process will always get better. And I think, you know, as you gain experience over the years, you find ways of doing things faster or better, or in hindsight, you're going to keep improving. The trust people are the people who try to create stability. They look at creating processes that will give you predictability and stability. And during times of COVID, the trust people probably were the most anxious because we were not in stable times. The mystique people are the analytical people who look at things and look at the data and try to decide how to make sense of things. And I often call them the voice in the room. When you're listening to people, maybe it's a strategic planning meeting to launch the concept of a upcoming event that will happen, and everybody's giving their ideas. The mystique people will often sit there for a while and listen and figure out what they're hearing, and then they'll speak. And they often speak as a collective wisdom in the room. That's what I call them. The alert people are the detail people, the people that make sure all of the details get done. And their brains are thinking about, what are the risks that I need to make sure things run smoothly? So anytime you want to make sure you execute, having a person whose primary language or secondary is alert is really, really beneficial. So the next slide. When we talk about communicating then in the languages of the Fascinate world, there is the ideal. When we identify the fact that you have a primary and secondary language, we really are saying, use your superpowers. Don't be a chameleon and try to say, oh, well, I'm trying to sell this to a person who's got power, so I'm going to try to talk in a more decisive way to help them. But that's not going to help you, because when you talk in a language that's not your comfort zone, that's not your superpower, you don't have the confidence. And when a person hears the lack of confidence in you, they're not going to want to buy from you. They're not going to trust you, or it will take longer. So the ideal optimum is to really understand where your confidence and comfort level comes from the languages that you are most good at. And when you do that, you'll develop the trust and the confidence to be able to connect with people. On the opposite side of the curve, you see the word alienating communications. And this is what happens when we use our superpowers and we get really anxious, and then our superpowers actually become what we call double trouble. They are not helping us. So a person who is an alert, a detailed person, when they get anxious, they suddenly say, no, we have to do it this way. We have to follow this pattern because this is how it's going to work, because they're anxious. When a person who's a passionate person gets really anxious, their emotions bubble up more, and then they can get a little bit over emotional and say, oh, you don't understand. This has got to be the way we do things. Like, we can't do this. It's going to hurt people's feelings. So all of us in our own languages, when we're stressed, we get too much of stuff, and then people can look at it as a turnoff. And there are ways to solve that, recognizing it and then dialing it back. The next slide. So I wanted to share the uniqueness, because when we do use our primary and secondary language, we are most authentic and confident. And I shared the fascination. We can go to the next slide, because I really wanted you to understand, own your uniqueness and recognize the uniqueness in others, because the last acronym is P is for potential, and it's defined as the ability to develop, achieve, or succeed. And the next two slides to finish off this page. When you recognize the uniqueness of individuals, either in yourself or in others, you can take that and tap into that potential to make them more of who they are. And imagine what you can do to your communications and relationships when you adopt a Rev Up approach. The next slide. And as people, we do have the power to uplift people's potential. And the way we can do that is two ways, is that we have the ability to uplift people's confidence through supporting them, through acknowledging what they're doing. And then we have the ability to give them knowledge, skills, and abilities through experience, through coaching, through sending them to sessions. And when we have the role to do both, and when we do both, we help the other. So when you give somebody a compliment, you're increasing their confidence. When you increase their confidence, then you increase their knowledge, skills, and abilities to do a better job. And vice versa. When they get more skills and knowledge and skills, they get more confidence. So as individuals, we have the ability to uplift or put down others. And we have the ability to uplift and put down ourselves. So if you can just help your inner critic dial it down and help yourself, motivate yourself upwards to create more confidence in yourself. Next slide. So rev up your uniqueness. And in doing that is look at how you can rev up people's uniqueness by respecting our individuality and by looking at us all as equals, where our differences is what makes us better. Each one of us adds to our team, our committee, to create the successes that we have. And when we value and recognize that, we really are helping to embrace people's uniqueness and tap into that potential. The next slide. So putting it all together, you can stand out and rev up your future by looking at your inner strengths and developing that. You know, the Fascination tool is amazing at really helping you. If you're not sure quite who you are and how you shine, the Fascination tool is a really good look in the mirror to build that confidence. Rev up your communication skills is the next point, is that when you start to speak to people with respect, equality, looking at their uniquenesses and potential, then you're building a trusting relationship. And when you build that trusting relationship, you're going to build the connections that you have, and that's going to result in stronger bonding that could be strengthening your collegial relationships and your client relationships. And then the last point here is to rev up your game and to look at your uniqueness and tap into that potential so you can come out and be strong. The next slide. So how are you going to face those threats of the lack of the distraction that people have, the competition that you've got in the marketplace, and that concept of everybody does the same thing, commoditization? Next slide. So how do you stand out in a crowd? Next slide. So what you need to do, what you need to think about is to become more successful. Don't change who you are. Become more of who you are. Step into the power that you have of your inner self. Build the strength of your inner self. Next slide. So reclaim your authority. Next. Rev up your future by, and here's the last points: respect, equality, valued uniqueness, and potential. I'm going to open it up now. I wish you so much success as you imagine what you can accomplish when you adopt a Rev approach. So are there any questions out there? I'm going to pop up my last slide since I can't see you. This is how you get a hold of me if you'd like to learn more.
Hilda, that was fabulous. Great session. We do have one question. Someone has written in here, thank you for the session. It was fabulous. Could you speak a little bit more about Fascination Advantage? Tell us a little bit more about that in your conversation words.
Sure. Thank you for asking that. I shared a bit about Fascination really to help you with a tool that I found really, really beneficial. What I loved about the Fascination tool is it's done in a positive way. And I am a Fascination certified advisor. And of all the tools I've ever taken, what I love is it speaks English. It says it really neatly, and it does it in a positive way. We do so much self-reflection, and we find ourselves lacking, that this is really going to help. So if people are interested in learning more, I would suggest that they go to my website. There is a section on Fascination Advantage, and they can actually purchase the tool at a discounted price than going on the actual Fascination website. So that's certainly one way they can learn more about it. But as I said, I find it's such, of all the tools I ever did, and I'm a tool finder, I'll go into everything and anything just to see. And the more you learn about yourself, I think it's better to really boast your confidence and understand who you truly, truly are.
Thank you. That was great. I personally truly enjoyed this session, and I am confident everyone else who was on this session did as well. I walked away with a couple of key messages that I'm going to keep for me, and I hope resonate with others. You gave us the confidence in us to build our business in this really tough environment right now, and encouraged us to use the vision of our future using your 5 key words of Rev Up. And so thank you very much. I'm going to put Rev Up on my wall, and those 5 key words are going to inspire me daily. So Hilda, I can't thank you enough, and I'm sure I speak for everyone else who's on this session as well. And I hope many who are not on this session have a chance to watch it afterwards. So thank you again, and this is the end of our session. I'd like to thank FeedLoop and CanPlan Events and Conference Services for sponsoring all of our production needs for this session. Planners, the Discover Waterloo Adventure starts very shortly at 3:30. So just click on the session in the platform to receive the Zoom link, those watching. Make sure that you have the Kahoot app downloaded so that you can take part in all of the fun and games in the gamification. Suppliers, enjoy some downtime and get caught up in some work. We will see you tonight for the Gala Awards. I remind you that the program begins at 7:30, so enjoy yourselves this afternoon and look forward to seeing everyone at the Gala this evening. Thank you again, Hilda.
Thank you.